y'all. You ever hear of a condominium cow? Well, they're about to get outlawed in New York. Hey friends, welcome back to Renewed Homestead. Ben and Denise here, and yes, there is a war on meat. And yes, this will continue to get a shadow banned on YouTube. After our last video, sure enough, they put the thumb down on us, and so now more than ever, it's important to give us that thumbs up and share our videos because they squashed us. We did not plan on making a video like this quite so soon, but the mayor of New York City came out and said that they are going to reduce their meat consumption by 50%?
By a third.
By a third. Okay, not 50%, but by a third. So, all you condominium cows out there, you're on notice. You are probably going to be taking a hike. I know when Alec and I went to New York years ago, there was this great big condominium building and just cows and cows and cows. So I am curious how many cows live in New York City. But
yeah, I always thought the meat production was in rural America, but so I'm not really sure how much that's going to help New York City, but okay.
That's the old way of thinking.
Okay, apparently. All right, so we want to talk today a little bit about what the stats really say and where a lot of this notion comes from. Now, many of you are probably not aware of something called C40 cities. C40 cities are a group of cities around the world that basically have come together to combat climate change. A big push agenda of C40 cities, as well as the Climate Commission, is actually reducing livestock, and they're looking at reducing livestock in large numbers. And we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about where this misconception of the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced by livestock, especially cows, really came from. So C40 cities, New York is one, and I'll put on the screen a list of North American cities that are part of C40. Like I stated, and I'm sure you guessed, New York City is a C40 city, Austin, Texas, Portland, Seattle, and like I said, I'll have a list of them on the screen for you. So I would encourage you to just get a little more information about C40. We're not going to delve into it here. Just know it's a group of cities around the world that are basically partnered and that are pushing a lot of the meat narrative. Now, we know there's a war on meat, as Ben said, and I know some people might be rolling their eyes. There is no war on meat. Well, hang with us. We want to talk a little bit about why the numbers are skewed and where we think a lot of the problems lie, right? So, and you can see this in the UK, they're talking about giving medication to cows to reduce methane. Netherlands, y'all know what's going on in the Netherlands right now. They're literally trying to take farmland from farmers and basically bankrupt them. We know the entire European Commission has talked about reducing meat. Now, the Climate Change Committee is recommending like a 20% reduction in meat and dairy by 2030. And then I believe it's 45% by 2040. And I'll put those numbers on the screen for y'all. And you can look this up. Now, that's a very conservative estimate because we're seeing that a lot of other countries are calling for a much larger reduction. We know Canada is talking about a 75 to 80% reduction, and people in the European Commission have also echoed those statements. So that's a very conservative number. Biden has actually come out and said he's going to have a 51% reduction in carbon emissions in America by 2030. So we already know that this is in the works. And when we talk about a lot of what's going on in Europe, and we talk about a lot of what's going on in America, we collectively call it the West. And you heard us talk about this in the BRICS video because they're all coordinating this together. Now, it's happening faster in the EU, the European Union, than it is here, but some of these same strategies are happening here as well. We just eat a lot more meat, so I think it's going to be a little harder to push here, but
yeah, probably so. And the whole carbon emissions things, everybody goes right to the whole cow thing. cow farts. Yeah, we got to reduce the meat. It doesn't make any sense. That's not where your emissions are. And let's talk about the cows for a minute. You know, the hippies had it right. Grass is the answer, man.
Not that kind.
I'm telling you.
I think I was a different kind of grass.
Not to a cow.
Not to, okay.
But we're feeding cows grain.
We used to feed boring old grass to cows.
Cows are not meant to eat grains. If you want to see this in action, go watch Food Inc. It is a very good, really, it's a documentary movie. And they actually have a trunk cart in the side of a cow, and they can open it up and look at the digestive process. These poor cows, they're fed grains pretty much well, not quite the minute they're born, but as soon as they're pulled off their mamas, they're fed grain.
And a lot of them are pulled off their mamas very young.
Way too early. But these poor animals spend their entire lives in pain because the gas bloats them, they hurt, they've got a constant stomach ache. Can you imagine living like that? Well, that's what grains are doing to these cows, and of course they're farting. They've got stomach aches. So, you know, just feeding them what they're supposed to be eating, grass, hay, whatever, was going to be would reduce the emissions quite a bit in itself. But
yeah, and do cows fart and burp? Of course, we all do, right? That's part of being a mammal. And...
Not me. I just bloat.
Right.
Yes.
Not me.
But it would significantly reduce it if we not only fed them grass-fed, but we also rotationally grazed so we could lessen the stress that is on a cow when you're dealing with pest pressures and everything else that goes into it.
And doesn't rotating them basically give you free fertilizer so you don't have to come in with chemicals?
It actually does, yeah.
Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Well, not yet. Not yet,
Okay,
but we're
not yet.
getting there. We're getting there. And one question I have is they're going after farmers and ranchers and, you know, expecting them to do this drastic reduction. But what are we doing about the corporations that are poisoning our waterways and our land? I mean, we just saw examples of this with the Ohio train derailment, plus the toxic spill that happened in the Ohio River that the media doesn't talk about at all.
Careful.
Right?
Careful.
But I don't hear anybody going into the corporations, and this is where some of our ire comes into, because it seems like it's a war against farmers and ranchers instead of looking at this collectively and saying, okay, what are areas that we can do to make a great amount of impact in a smart way, a way that's not going to do more harm than good. And ruminant animals are needed to heal the land. What was it? How many buffalo were on?
Tatanka.
30 to 50 million estimated buffalo roamed the prairies before they were settled.
Yeah, and I don't remember the world ending because there were so many buffalo.
There were a lot of grasslands and...
Yeah, and the grasslands in the areas where they don't get a lot of rain, especially in like Wyoming and other places like that, the buffalo, the urine and the poop from the buffalo actually nourished the soil. It actually gave it moisture.
Grasses and forests actually create their own climate. So when they went through and wiped out the buffalo, those grasses went away, and that led to the Dust Bowl, which hit right about the same time as the stock market crash and
everything else, yeah.
The Great Depression.
Yep, and that's a whole nother rabbit
Oh,
hole
boy,
we could go down. But you know, so we want to educate a little bit and kind of talk about this. Now I'm gonna refer to some notes here because there's a lot of information here. And guys, we're just scratching the surface on this, just like we did with bricks, just like we did with the green energy, where we didn't even go into the animal impact and the land impact of everything they're clearing and all the animals that have died due to solar and wind farms. We're just scratching the surface here. We really encourage y'all to do your own research, but we just want to make you aware, because what have we been talking about for months? Please put back food, especially meat. So one of the main reasons we're doing this is so that y'all can see, well, maybe there is something going on, right? So a lot of these countries are like, well, people are not going to go along with this. So what they've said, the media, you can read this in media articles, and I've actually got some links and articles I'm going to put up on the screen, but I'm actually going to put the articles in the description as well, so y'all can go back and see that what we're talking about is accurate, and we're not just blowing smoke, right?
Well, yeah, and a lot of the actually, if not all, most of the stats we get are from government websites.
The EPA, EPA themselves.
EPA, yeah, we're not going to conspiracytheoriesrs.com
Right.
trying to give you some numbers that sound, out
Right.
of this world.
Yes.
These are government stats.
Yes. So I took some notes here. So as we talked about, all these countries are looking for drastic reductions. We know Canada is really talking about some of the most drastic, along with the EU. But here's some different ways that they're looking into doing this. So they're talking about increasing the price, which we're already seeing. And we know the prices of meat are going to increase naturally just because of the drought that happened last year. Yeah, last summer. And a lot of ranchers and farmers had to sell off a good portion of their herds because they couldn't afford to feed them. I know Missouri, Greg Judy was talking about it this morning about how they're still in a drought. So we're still having those pressures. So that in itself is causing the meat prices. But now they're talking about artificially increasing prices. They're talking about an advertising ban. And if you think this is crazy, Amsterdam did this last year. So so farmers, ranchers, they cannot actually advertise in Amsterdam. So they're talking about reduced availability, which we're seeing this, right? We're seeing this in the Netherlands. They first tried to provide incentives for farmers and ranchers not to farm, and then they just went in and decided they're going to start taking their land. They're saying they're going to force them to basically cut their herds by drought, like 75, 80% in some cases up to 90%. And as the
How many? Do you remember how many farms? Didn't they go from like 900 farms down to like 200?
It was
just a short period of time.
I'll look it up and I'll put it on the screen. I remember it was a crazy number, and that's why
half to three quarters of the farms no longer operated.
it was gone, and that's why the farmers erupted in the Netherlands, right? So we've seen this coercion, land grabs. This is not the way to do it. This is a government. This is communism. This isn't what.
Easy.
I'm just saying that's That's communism. It is. They're talking about media campaigns, which we're already seeing this, right?
Eating crickets.
Eat the bugs, eat the bugs. How many Hollywood stars have you said, oh, this cricket protein's great? Nicole Kidman out there eating a cricket. I'm sure Nicole Kidman eats crickets on a regular basis.
But we never saw her put them into her mouth.
I think we did on one ad. I think we did on one ad. But what was interesting, the World Economic Forum, which is one of the big pushers of this, right? The consumption of meat in Davos during the World Economic Forum always skyrockets. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, had a whole bunch of that Kobe beef.
Kobe beef, yeah.
Beef.
Kobe beef.
Sorry, Kobe Bryant.
Rules for thee. Well, Kobe Bryant's no longer with us.
Well, that's true.
Yes. So rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah.
They're also talking about labels. I'm not really sure how the label thing works into this. This is in this article that I'm sharing with y'all. I'm not sure how the labeling of meat works, but it's interesting that they're talking about labeling meat for that, but they won't put labels on the meat that's produced in China. They won't put labels on meat that have had vaccines. They are fighting any meat that's been processed with GMO corn, which majority of our cattle in this country are produced with genetically modified grains. So I just, kind of an interesting how they'll do something for, against farmers and ranchers, but not against corporations. But like I said, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, right? So
we step lightly around here because otherwise we fall into these rabbit holes.
Right. So, and environmental groups for years have claimed that beef, mostly beef, but all livestock accounts for 51% of greenhouse gas emissions, right? But does it really account for 51% of greenhouse gas emissions? No. Exactly.
There's your answer. No.
Right. Yeah. So.
You're going to put that chart on the screen, right? It shows.
Yeah, I'm going to show that in just a moment. But that came from, so that main claim came from the World Watch Institute, which is an environmental group where they said 51% of greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock. And what we're finding is a lot of these studies that are done are very, very flawed. Right? So who is it? And I need to look this up. And if you actually look at the EPA, agriculture as a whole accounts for 9.4% of greenhouse gas emissions. That includes livestock and crops, which we're going to take a look at here in a second. We're going to put that number on the screen here for you. And these are the charts. So this is where I need to actually look at the notes. So if you actually look, and we've got this on the screen, you'll see where it shows the piece of the pie of agriculture. And when they list agriculture on this, they do not break off crops versus livestock. They just kind of lump it all together. But if you actually look at the numbers and you add up livestock, livestock accounts for CH4 emissions in 2021 were 278.3 metric tons. All right, so that now we're talking about the entire life cycle of the livestock. You know, they're talking about fertilizer management, urea management, all of it, okay? But if you go down and you actually look at the agricultural soils, now agricultural soils actually produce a lot more what we call N2O emissions. All right, so agricultural soils produce the majority of these emissions, and they produce more N2O emissions. Now, N2O emissions are actually far worse than carbon-based emissions and CO2-based emissions, but they are equal in 2021 to 598.1 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. So, agricultural soils, soy, corn, right, beans, rapeseed oil, all of these things that go into veggie burgers and vegan butters and vegan food actually create more CO2, and they actually create more N2O, which is nitrous oxide. So why aren't they pushing the farmers, right? And in some ways they're pushing the farmers to try to do organic practices, which we are all for. Yeah. They're doing it in the wrong way. But right now they're not going after all of these crops. Hopefully the wind's not too bad, y'all. But they're going after the farmers and the ranchers. And we see croplands with the use of chemical fertilizers is actually creating far more CO2. And this is according to the EPA website.
Right. And this going right back to where we started, if you were feeding grass to the cows, you wouldn't need to have near the grain production for those animals.
Yes, and and we're going to get into where a lot of the misconceptions come from, right? But I want to talk, and I'm going to put this website in the description, and I'll also put this on the screen for you. Methane, okay, the most common greenhouse gas, or GHG, in animal agriculture acts just like other GHGs in the environment. That's what they basically lead us to believe. That's not accurate. Okay, so there's three main greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. All impact the environment in critically different ways, especially as it relates to their source, lifespan in the atmosphere, and global warming potential. So carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide are also known as stock gases. Stock gases are long-lived gases, and once emitted will continue to build up in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide, for example, has an estimated lifespan in the atmosphere of 1,000 years, meaning that carbon dioxide emitted in the year 1020 may still be in the atmosphere today. That methane, on the other hand, is a flow gas. Flow gases are short-lived gases that are removed in the atmosphere at a more rapid pace. Methane's lifespan is about 10 years. This means that a flow gas like methane would impact the environment for a duration that is nearly 100 times shorter than stock gas carbon dioxide. All right, we know carbon dioxide is actually created by burning fossil fuels, which are not from fossils, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole, right? So, and this is actually from UC Davis. So you can see when you really start to delve into this, you're like, okay, wait a minute. Why are we not being educated in all of this? And why aren't we looking at this as a whole instead of trying to piecemeal everything that isn't going to impact the planet? We're going to get into that here as well.
And it, trust us, it's overwhelming, and that's why we're trying to boil it down as best we can, because
I hope we're doing okay.
Yeah,
There's so much information.
Yeah, we could go 4 hours straight with all this information and just,
We're trying to pack this into a short YouTube video. Hopefully this is,
because y'all don't hang on for the whole thing anyway, so right. Stay with us, please.
But what's interesting, if you look at the chart on the screen right now, do you know 82% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the energy sector, not from livestock?
Oh, you mean the fossil fuels that they burn to charge the electric cars?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And the energy we use to powerhouses.
82%.
82% come from the energy sector.
And how much are the cow farts?
Was it 9.4%?
Huh.
And that was all of agriculture, by the way. And if you look at the chart, agriculture is actually the second lowest greenhouse gas producing emissions. According to the EPA, it's the only one lower is like waste and recycle.
So in the big government game of chess, they're going after the pawn rather than the king.
You're going after the wrong guy.
Yep. Or the queen. Queen is the most powerful player.
She is, but you don't win the game by capturing the queen.
No, that's true. That's true. So the issue is that when they're trying to force an agenda that's going to create more harm than good, it doesn't add up when you look at the stats. I'm trying to find this video clip. I'm going to see if I can actually put this in here. But Rep. Lamalfa, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He's a representative from California. There were a panel of witnesses who were testifying on the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. He actually asked them how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. Not a single one could answer that question. Not a single one.
Yeah, you're going to link that video, right?
Yep.
Yeah, because copyright, we don't want to just paste it in.
I'm going to see if I can. If I can, I'll put it in. If I get a copyright claim, I'll have to put it out. But.
Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess, it's okay.
I'll bite 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreher.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm going
Okay.
to get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%.
Because I didn't know the answer either, honestly, and they had some great guesses. They were way wrong.
Yep.
You'll appreciate that.
Yes, you will. Now, where did this whole misconception come from?
That's a whole different rabbit hole.
Well, no, I've got it right. But the main misconception happened in 2006, right? There was a UN report that came out and said livestock created 18% of all greenhouse gas emissions. And when they looked at it, they said, well, oh my gosh, that's more than all of transportation combined. So they were like, well, wait a minute, we've got to go after livestock. This is really hurting us. But when you actually look into the data, you realize the study was extremely flawed. So what they did was they took the entire life cycle of livestock, right? So just take like a cow from birth all the way through when it's processed, the processing, what was involved in processing, the transportation to get that meat to market, and then getting it from market to your home. They looked at the entire span of the basic food chain for livestock. Well, when they looked at transportation, all they did was look at the exhaust that came from like the planes, trains, automobiles, right?
I have my people in planes, trains, and automobiles.
And they didn't look at the entire life cycle of the supply chain of the car from, the parts, the creation, the mining that's needed. They didn't look at any of that. So the study was extremely flawed. Now, there was a gentleman called Henning Steinfeld who corrected this, but the misconception still persists, unfortunately. And many people think, that if we meet as infrequently as once a week, it will make a significant difference to the climate. But according to a UC Davis study, even if Americans eliminated all animal protein from their diets, they would reduce U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by only 2.6%. And if they go on this Meatless Monday, which they've tried to advertise for years, they're only going to reduce it by 0.5%, 0.5%. So according to the FAO statistical database, which is part of the United Nations, the total direct greenhouse gas emissions from U.S. livestock have declined 11.3% since 1961. So, you know, and what do you, and I don't believe this agenda is going to work. I don't believe I think they're going to be able to get some people to reduce meat, but I don't think in countries like America, I don't think in countries like Argentina, which are two of the, I believe it's Argentina, are two of the largest meat-eating countries in the world. Yeah. I don't believe that narrative's going to work. Well, what are they going to do if it doesn't work? Right?
That's actually scary in itself.
And that's where Agenda 2030 comes in, which we were told for years was a conspiracy theory, but I want y'all to look up Agenda 2030 on the UN database. And there is a gentleman called David Debunking. It's a DAP 2030 channel. He talks a lot about this. Some of you might be like, what is going on? But he's got a lot of information about what's happening with our sun right now with the grand solar minimum, with what's happening with the solar storms in space right now, with the Hunga Tonga eruption that happened, that is actually now starting to filter into the Northern Hemisphere, which was the largest water vapor eruption on recorded history. We just had the Russian volcano that just erupted. So there's a lot going on right now that they're trying to say is climate change, which, yeah, the climate is changing. And I know, you all know, I do not agree with the toxic chemicals that we're putting on the land. I don't even know the stuff that was on the train derailment. I don't even know why we even have those chemicals, right? Like some of the stuff is, to me, we shouldn't be producing. We shouldn't be doing anything with.
Why do we have a train full of nerve gas?
Yeah. Right. So we believe we have done harm to the planet. Yep. But what they're doing is not going to fix it. It's going to make it worse, and they are going to put millions and millions of people in poverty, and they are going to starve millions of people for this agenda, which isn't going to work at all. Yep. And that should scare all of us and enrage all of us, because there's a lot of innocent people that could die because of this.
Yep. And we just got banned from YouTube.
We just got banned. Here's our first strike.
When we come back in a week, yeah, it's it can be overwhelming, and like I said, we try to boil this down and consolidate it for you,
and there's so much more. That's why I recommend following like David Debunking and other channels like that are really breaking down.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to say. He has a great channel, and he has short videos. I know this is going to be a long one, but he has short videos, like 3-4 minutes, and packs in just information, boom, boom, boom.
And some of them are longer, but usually about 20 minutes. Yeah, 15 to 20 minutes.
Are they that long?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they just go so quick that you don't realize. But yeah, great information, and it's stuff you don't even think about that we should have been taught in schools. I mean, that great big ball of fire in the sky, that has a lot of impact on us. I mean, they're starting to see correlations with volcanoes and earthquakes and all that, and it's like, yeah, that really does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, look at when we have a coronal mass ejection from the sun, and then look when it actually hits Earth, how many earthquakes and volcanic eruptions we actually have when that happens. It's actually quite astounding. We didn't know this up until a couple months ago, and we're like, every time there's a coronal mass ejection, like we're looking a few days later when it hits Earth, okay, where was the earthquake or where's the volcanic eruption?
Yeah. That's if you ever look at video of the sun, you see those big plumes, those big arches. That's a coronal mass ejection, and when they come towards Earth, when they're coming at us, they hit us. You can go up look at the Carrington event back in
1859, was it?
Yeah,
something like that.
Mid 1800s. That's the 1900s, 1800s.
No, it was 1800s. Carrington event was in the 1800s. Yeah.
It actually said there was enough electricity or enough power that came through. It said telegraph
lines, right?
Lines and the actual buildings set them on fire. So anyway, that sun can affect us.
Absolutely, and it does.
Anyway, so that's a whole different thing. But we learned about that through David Debunking. I think you ought to check out his channel.
Yeah, well, you told me about the Carrington event.
Well, yeah,
I actually hadn't heard about it
about
until
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, this all sounds scary, and you're like, okay, well, what can I possibly do?
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple of solutions.
Well, one, find a local rancher and buy meat from them.
Yes.
Buy direct.
if you cannot raise yourself, yes.
If you can't raise it yourself.
Find a local homestead, find a local farm, find a local rancher. And if you don't have a lot of money, offer to help. Many of them need help. Guys, we need help here. If we had somebody that came in and said, look, I'll work a few hours a week, we would happily share meat and eggs and milk and butter and cream with them, right?
Easy there, woman. She's giving away the farm.
But we would, right? Because we need the help and we would appreciate it. So there's a lot of people like us that would be like, hey, we could really use a third set of hands or a fourth set of hands. So find local homesteads near you, find local farmers and ranchers and say, look, if you need some help, I don't have a lot of money. Can I volunteer a few hours a week and then I can take some milk home or meat or whatever it is, right?
Well, that's how we met Billy and family.
Yeah.
We volunteered to go help them out. We just wanted the education, and they were so grateful for the help. They sent us home with 2 or 3
chickens. Yeah,
two
well,
or three
chickens. That was our
chickens.
first foray into actually processing animals. We
Yeah.
wanted to learn how to do it,
We
and
just
so
wanted to learn, and we came home with meat.
yeah.
So,
So, and we've done the same thing here. It's all about community. If you have the money, great. Supporting local is the way to go. We have to get off of the food supply. We have to get down and support our local communities. Find a local farmer, rancher, homestead. Support them. Buy your meat from them if you can.
Yep.
The third, and what I think is the better option, raise it yourself.
Well, yeah.
Right? And if you have a small area, you have an HOA, rabbits.
Rabbits, quail.
Yep. And you'll want fat. Rabbits don't have a lot of fat. So fat is really, when things get tough, times get hard, it's fat that's going to be difficult to come by. But you can get fat in sources of like meat, butter, oils, things of that nature. But you'll definitely want some protein. If you can raise chickens, great. Rabbits are easier than chickens, by far, I think.
Yeah, and we actually talked about that, and just kind of talking through as we do, kind of banter about things. You could raise rabbits in an apartment.
Okay.
I mean, people have pet rabbits in apartments. But you could actually set up several hutches, and you could raise rabbits in an apartment.
It wouldn't be, it's probably not going to be the cleanest thing in the world.
It's
but
not ideal. No, you're going to need a lot of newspaper or straw or whatever.
big buckets or whatever.
And if you're processing, little apartment kitchen sink is going to be tough, but you could do it. You could do it.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. But I would say, rabbits, I know a lot of people raise quail. They're quiet. Quail just seem very mean to me. So I really have no desire to raise quail, but I know a lot of people do it because they're quiet. And, and if you're in an HOA, quiet's the way to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And rabbits too, if you've got a yard, you could create wood hutches. You could create rabbit hutches with wood slats. That's what we're in the process of doing, and put them out in your yard in the spring and summer and fall until it gets cold, and then they'll eat the grasses and everything else. So they're not expensive to keep, in the basically spring, summer, and fall at all.
Right.
And rabbit pellets aren't really that expensive in the winter, so.
That's true. Time things out, and then you process most of your rabbits right before winter. That way you only have to carry a couple of pairs of breeding rabbits.
Yep, and they breed quickly.
Yeah, they do.
Yep.
We should be, Red should be
Yeah,
about ready again.
Yeah, any day in about a week.
Huh?
Yeah, right before we leave, I think she's due. So we are actually heading to Joel Salatin's next month. So
Yes, we
really
are.
excited about that. We'll talk to y'all about that more as it comes up. But
Yeah. Are we posting this today? Mm-hmm. Happy birthday, Hope. My daughter's birthday.
So here are some options for you. Guys, we're not trying to scare anybody. We're not fear mongers. We just really want you to get prepared. At least know that meat prices will go up, and kind of what's going on with the agenda, why these numbers don't really add up to us. But I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you've learned something. Let us know if you have any questions. Like I said, I will have links in the description. I'm also, as you saw, we put stats on the screen. But, just let us know. And do any comments if you knew about the C40 cities, if you knew about some of these studies, some of these institutes, if you've actually looked at some of the EPA reports, let us know. We'd be really curious to your thoughts.
Yeah.
And please like and share the video, because you know, after the the environmental video we did, we got toggled back a lot. We didn't get banned, but they call it shadow banning. And I know this one's going to do the same thing. And we're a small channel, so they can easily do this to us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're not that valuable to them, so to shut us up wouldn't be a big deal.
No, no. And I think the most important thing that we can all do, pray. Pray, pray,
Yes,
pray.
pray.
Pray for our nation, pray for the country. We need to turn back to God. We need to turn back to some semblance of morality and community. We're so divided, and a nation divided falls, and we can't stand together if we're divided, and we have to stop blaming each other and come together and solve these issues. And instead, we're so busy, the politicians have us blaming each other instead of actually looking at who's responsible for the decline of the West.
Yep.
So,
our dollar and just the media has us so bound up and angry at each other, and that's what they want.
it's social engineering.
Yeah, that's that. I'll say it's the devil's work. The devil wants us mad at each other and fighting and all that, and I think the devil's at all levels of our government, and
Yeah, they're not even hiding it anymore.
no, they're not even. No, they're not hiding it, and it's bad. So we pray for you guys. We pray for our families. We pray for the animals too. We pray for their health, their safety, because without them we can't exist. Without us, they can't exist.
Exactly.
So
So,
anyway.
yep.
All right. Well, hopefully you stuck in there with us. And again, we're not trying to scare you. We tried to boil it down, make it as consolidated as we can. But it's all fact check true. Go to those government websites. Well, as much as you can trust them. We'll link the sites in there that we've looked at, and we'll keep going. Hopefully, we'll be back in a week and be able to share another video with you. So. All right. Anything else?
I think we're
I
good.
got a cute story that happened at church this morning, but I think we'll share that in another video.
And don't forget, y'all, we could use your support. We've got comfrey root,
Yes.
hori knives, willow rooting hormone, which is amazing. Willow's amazing, and we actually added some comfrey to the willow rooting hormone as well. We also have deodorant, so if you need any of those things, we'd appreciate your support. Go to our website, renewedhomestead.com/shop.
Yep. And Robbie Lynn over at the Homesteading Pasture says that hori knife is the best tool she's ever used.
Well, she didn't say that. She said she loves her knife.
Oh, I was paraphrasing.
Thanks, Robbie Lynn.
Yes, that's Robbie Lynn. All right, everybody, take care. God bless. We'll see you all on the next video, maybe in a week.
Bye, y'all.